Breaking news today. Putin's top generals are fighting, and the situation is only getting worse. These factions are vying for control of the situation. Although the Wagner Group's armed rebellion against Russia's military leadership was short-lived, the repercussions of the uprising are still being felt today. There are still internal power plays and high-level purges happening more than 3 weeks after the historic challenge to Russian President Vladimir Putin's authority. As other top figures fall due to exile, detention, or dismissal, some top figures are tightening their grips on power. Experts say the current situation in Ukraine reflects the fact that various powerful officials and figures are focused on their own agendas, have divergent views of the military leadership in Moscow, and disagree on the best strategy for winning the conflict. Wagner's uprising seems to have added fuel to the fire of long-simmering discord within Moscow's armed forces. A risk for the Kremlin is that the mutiny demonstrated that Putin doesn't have the monopoly of violence to the same extent that he used to, as Russia analyst Katerina Stepanenko of the Institute for the Study of War, ISW, told Insider. As a result, we are seeing a lot of military formations and military figures that are pushing for their own objectives. However, the highest-ranking military officials are also resisting. Wagner Group founder Yevgeny Prigozhin had been publicly feuding with Moscow's defense ministry for months before the rebellion began over a wide range of issues, including battlefield strategy, a lack of ammunition, and even Putin's justifications for waging war on his neighbor. Wagner forces marched toward Moscow as tensions peaked on June 23, when Prigozhin diverted his notoriously violent mercenary organization from eastern Ukraine and invaded Russia. Only hours before their departure, Prigozhin and a number of his fighters were able to negotiate an agreement with the Kremlin that allowed them to go into exile. This agreement was brokered by Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko. Since the rebellion, Prigozhin's whereabouts have been unknown, with competing theories circulating. Although he was previously an outspoken critic of the defense ministry, there is now evidence that the former warlord is at a military camp in Belarus and has gone silent. Russian military leadership is already under fire for its handling of the conflict in Ukraine, but Western officials have claimed that Prigozhin's actions in June exposed serious cracks within the leadership. But he isn't the only powerful person in Moscow who thinks things could be run differently, possibly for personal gain, and new cracks are appearing even as the defense ministry tightens its grip. Due to the disarray within the Russian Ministry of Defense and the Russian armed forces, these figures are able to push for their own objectives and for their own visions of the war, Stepanenko said. I don't think it's as extreme as Prigozhin, but there are more figures advocating for their own interests, even though they all want to occupy all of Ukraine. Whether or not these figures back Russian General Valery Gerasimov, who has been in charge of the war in Ukraine for almost all of 2023, is a major factor in the balance of power in Moscow. People who are close to Gerasimov and Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu, both of whom appear to have Putin's favor at the moment, are in a strong position within the pro-Gerasimov camp. Ramzan Kadyrov, the leader of a group of Chechen fighters, is one such figure. Despite his history of disagreements with the Russian Defense Ministry and his support for the Wagner Group's actions in Ukraine, Kadyrov sided with Moscow's military leadership during the mutiny and even offered to send his fighters to stop Wagner. Stepanenko claims that Kadyrov has always been outspoken about not wanting his forces to get involved in fighting in Ukraine, and that he even convinced Putin to send some of his fighters to the Russian region of Belgorod, which borders northeastern Ukraine, rather than into the fray itself.